The movie begins in a small town called the Land of Oz. The Auditions were happily celebrating the demise of the Wicked Witch as announced by Glinda the Good. Glinda magnificently sprouted out from the clouds, after which she popped her balloon in preparation to give the Auditions a glamorous speech. They all awaited in inconceivable suspense to hear what Glinda has to say, and as she told them that the Green Witch is dead, the whole town went ballistic and jumped in leaps of joy. As the celebration was ongoing, a little child called out to Glinda, and further asked her why wickedness happened. Glinda was initially left astounded by the question, but she answered it remarkably, by telling her the story of how the Wicked Witch was born. The Wicked Witch's father was Governor Throp, while her mother was Melina Throp. After they finished administration for the day, they decided to end the day nastily. They danced and finessed merrily, while also sipping a green nectar. One thing led to another that night, and they eventually had intercourse, not knowing that their little union would bring magic into the world. Melina was at the heat of labor, and they were all expecting a bouncing child, but to their immense disappointment, they found out that the baby was unlike any they've ever seen. She was green. Governor Throp couldn't hide his resentment towards the baby, so he told Dulcibert to take her away from his sight, and it was there she performed magic for the first time, but they all referred to it as a curse, except Dulcibert, who vowed to take care of her. Dulcibert raised her and named her Elphaba, but as she grew up, so did her challenges. At that time she already had a sister named Nessa Rose, whose fate is bound to a wheelchair. Nessa Rose was one of the few people who didn't resent Elphaba because of her color. Elphaba was enlightening her sister on the Wizard of Oz, but then some other children started taunting and making jest of Nessa Rose's situation, which made her cry painfully. Elphaba couldn't bear the thought of watching her sister wallow in agony, so she screamed at them to stop, and they ran away. Governor Throp came out almost immediately, but instead of thanking Elphaba for pursuing the bullies, he rather blamed her for making her sister cry. Glinda told them that she had a rough childhood, so it couldn't have been any easier for her. Few minutes later they brought out a carved statue of the Wicked Witch, and thereafter burnt it to the ground. After the whole incident, Glinda attempted leaving, but then, another Ozian stopped her from going with a striking question. She asked Glinda if it's true she was ever friends with the Wicked Witch, and she replied positively, but also told them it was a long time ago. This now brings us to the main plot of this movie, where Glinda the Good cross paths with the Wicked Witch for the first time. Glinda, a popular young woman gilded by privilege, arrived at Shiz University, the school she has always longed for. On her arrival, the other students sang a hymn to welcome her, and on spur of moment, Elphaba and her sister Nessa Rose arrived also. The students made way for Elphaba as she walked through, and as she got to the front of the line, Glinda was startled by her presence. Glinda stated her intention to major in sorcery, so she could be of help to Elphaba, who she felt had a major problem of being green. As they were conversing, Governor Throp wheeled Nessa Rose inside. Throp called out to Elphaba, and further instructed her to keep a low profile, so her sister can be able to live a normal life. Before he left, he gave Nessa Rose a parting gift, and after he left, Elphaba apologized to her for causing a scene, and she gladly accepted her apology. Few minutes later, the bell rang, which meant all students should proceed to their dorm room. Elphaba suggested that maybe it's time to leave, but Throp told her to stay behind so as to look after Nessa Rose for him. The next day, the students were gathered at an assembly, and it was then that all the professors and teachers were introduced to the students, including Madame Morrible. The whole students gave her a standing ovation as she majestically walked in. Madame Morrible, who happened to be the Dean of Sorcery, welcomed the students to the Shiz University, after which she announced their dormitory designations and room assignments. After Madame Morrible concluded her speech, Glinda followed her at close call to enable she get recognized, and also told her that she's eager to attend her sorcery seminar, but Madame Morrible told her that she doesn't do the seminars, unless someone very special come along, and that person is not her, which left Glinda disappointed. Miss Cottle on the other hand was congratulating Nessa Rose on gaining admission to the Shiz University, but got immensely startled on Elphaba's arrival. Out of resentment, Miss Cottle wheeled Nessa Rose away from Elphaba against her will. Elphaba was trying to stop her from wheeling her sister, and out of anger she screamed for her to stop, and on spur of moment, almost virtually everything started levitating. The students were ultimately terrified on the sight, but then Elphaba brought Nessa Rose back down, and the whole place was left in ruin. Nessa Rose was pissed at Elphaba for ruining her only chance to lead a normal life, so she wheeled away in agony. Madame Morrible controlled the entire situation, by telling the students that she was the one responsible for the destruction, as she claimed it was to prepare them for the unexpected. The students jeered for her after her speech, and she proceeded to meet with Elphaba. She asked the students which of them would volunteer to share their room with Elphaba, but before she finished talking, Glinda had already volunteered, thinking she was about to invite her to her seminar. Madame Morrible then told all the students to return to their dorm room, after which she told Elphaba to come with her, even though at first Glinda thought it was her being called. Madame Morrible told Elphaba that she'd like to teach her privately. Glinda was bizarrely perturbed, as for the first time in forever she didn't get her way, so her friends rushed her to her room. Madame Morrible inquired how long she had been bestowed with this talent of hers, and she told her it's since birth and something she can't control. She further told her that she has long awaited someone with talent like hers, and couldn't control her overwhelming joy from outpouring. After the conversation, Elphaba was now filled with so much confidence and purpose. She proceeded to her dorm room, and met with her new roommate Glinda. Glinda was all over herself, so she portioned a small place behind her wardrobe for Elphaba, and even felt it was a generous gesture. Glinda was somewhat happy with her so-called generous deed, so she told Elphaba to repay the favor by putting in a good word for her to Madame Morrible, but Elphaba on the other hand, was busy rearranging the room. Glinda told her that she knew she was the initiator of the levitation that happened earlier, and further aggressively asked how she did it. Elphaba was fed up of her incessant questions, and her outburst made the window to break, to the utmost astonishment of Glinda. Elphaba finally created her own space in the room, and the two roomies were both writing letters to their parents. They both tried to sleep but couldn't, as an uncomfortable feeling kept on disturbing them. They were biased to one another, so they kept on having it against themselves. Glinda was on the losing side of the roomies' war, and this infuriated her. The students gathered together in class for Dr. Dillamon's lecture. During the lecture, Dillamon told them of how humans were compatible with animals few years back. But as of now, animals are slowly being segregated, so he gave it to them as an assignment to figure out why. Glinda insisted that he teaches them actual history, instead of yapping about the past, and it was then that Dr. Dillamon overturned the insignia that criticized animals. Dr. Dillamon couldn't contain his anger, and as they refused to tell him who did it, he dismissed the class and sent everyone away. Elphaba didn't leave with the rest of the students, rather she helped him pick up his flowers, and further placed them carefully in his jar. Dillamon urged her to join her friends, but she refused, and it was there they bonded as friends. Madame Morrible was tutoring Elphaba on how to levitate, but no matter how hard she tried, the coin would not go up and she got frustrated. Madame Morrible told her to calm down, as these things take time, then she also told her that she heard what happened at Dr. Dillamon's class. As Madame Morrible brought up the topic, Elphaba started having a scorching feeling gushing through her, as she felt nobody should go through that, and on spur of moment she outburst again. Elphaba followed Dr. Dillamon from a distance, as she wanted to find out whether he has seen who put up the insignia. She followed him continuously to where he was having a meeting with other animals. Dillamon told them that the worst is yet to come, as some big names plan on eliminating all the animals from Shiz, and also take away their ability to speak and teach. The other animals got scared and wanted to leave immediately, and it was then that they saw Elphaba. Dr. Dillamon invited her inside and showed her hospitality. Elphaba inquired whether what he said can happen, and he revealed to her that it's already happening, which left her flabbergasted. Elphaba left the room feeling distraught, and as she was on her way home, she bumped into Prince Fiero for the first time. The next day, Miss Coddle announced the arrival of Prince Fiero to Shiz University. The female students were all marveled, as the prince was overly charming and carefree. Glinda was also part of his admirers, so she asked if he was looking for someone, but as he saw her, he immediately developed a keen liking towards her, and they bonded like they've met before. Fiero and Glinda danced for quite a while, after which Bach, who has been admiring Glinda since she first arrived, asked her to a dance with him. Glinda didn't want to arrogantly reject his proposal, so she convinced him that he'll be her hero, if only he goes to dancing with Nessa Rose in her stead. Bach went over almost immediately, and initiated a conversation with her. Nessa Rose went over to break the news to Elphaba that a boy asked her out. Glinda friends were dressing her up for the dance tonight, but then they saw a hideous hat in her closet. They inquired why she keeps such wretched antique, and she told them that it's for her granny, and she would give it away, but she doesn't hate anyone that much. On spur of moment, Elphaba came in to thank her on Nessa Rose's behalf. It then occurred to Glinda to propose the hat to Elphaba. Elphaba accepted the hat, because she thought it was from the goodness of her heart. As the other students were preparing for the ball, Elphaba went to talk with Madame Morrible on Glinda's behalf. The students ferried their way to an underground bunker, where the ball would be taking place. They were all dancing joyfully in unison, and as Bach noticed how much in love Glinda is with Fiero, he decided to come clean with Nessa Rose. After they both shared their innate feelings, Bach invited her to dance with him, and they danced and married happily regardless of her situation. Madame Morrible walked up to Glinda as she was with Fiero, after which she requested to speak with Glinda alone. She gifted Glinda with a training wand, and she thanked her greatly for having faith in her, and it was then that Madame Morrible told her that she has no faith in her, and this is in fact, a request that Elphaba made. Elphaba insisted that Glinda joins the sorcerer training program with her, unless she quits, and she can't risk losing her, so she had no choice than to do Elphaba's bidding. Almost immediately, Elphaba walked into the dance hall, but as she walked past, all the students stared at her in awe as though she was a monster. Elphaba felt immensely pained and wanted to walk away, but she didn't. Instead she started making weird dance moves. Glinda was feeling awfully sorry as she has started to regret her actions, so to make things a little bit better, she stepped into the dance floor and made virtually the same moves Elphaba made. Her friends tried to stop her as she was embarrassing them, but Glinda was unrelentless, and on spur of moment, Elphaba forgave her and they became best friends. Before you knew it, the whole crowd joined in the dancing, and what was previously a sad moment, turned into a massive joy for everyone. After the party, the new best friends bonded with each other, and it was then that Glinda gave Elphaba a nickname Elfie. The next day, Elphaba was already a popular figure and students were no longer scared of her. The whole students arrived at Dr. Dillamon's class for an important announcement. Dr. Dillamon told them that this would be his last class, as animals are no longer permitted to teach, and before he could finish his conversation, some guards came in and dragged Dr. Dillamon away. Elphaba was pissed as they all stood still and let them take the professor away, and her outburst made the poppies to start levitating, and on spur of moment the whole students fell asleep. Madame Morrible arrived almost immediately, and on seeing the disaster that had erupted, she wrote an urgent letter to the Wizard of Oz. The next day they got a letter from the Wizard of Oz, and when Elphaba read the letter she discovered that it was a personal invitation for her to meet the wizard at the Emerald City. Few minutes later, a majestic train arrived to pick Elphaba up. Glinda was very happy for her, but she was a little disappointed as she won't be able to see the Emerald City with her. Elphaba eventually boarded the train, and the entirety of the students cheered for her, including Glinda, her best friend. Before she left, Glinda swiftly got to her and gave her a leaflet that she previously forgot to give her, but as Elphaba opened it and read the content, she told Glinda to come on the train with her to meet the wizard, and Glinda speedily ran inside. As they approached the Emerald City, the two friends were marveled on how glamorous the city was. The entire citizens in the city welcomed them with open hands, and the duo were already loving life over there. Elphaba then proceeded to show the guards her invitation letter, and on reading it, they granted the friends passage inside. As they got inside, they first have met with a sage monkey who bowed to Elphaba, and further led them to the wizard's domain. They carefully entered a room where they were supposed to meet with the wizard, and as Elphaba mentioned her name, the wizard revealed his true self to them. The wizard gracefully welcomed Elphaba, but then he noticed an uninvited guest was also present there. After the pleasantries was completed, the wizard showed them his dream of the Oz of tomorrow. He invited them to come on the sandbox and he showed them around his dream city. The wizard noticed Elphaba wasn't totally comfortable with her color, so then he told her if it's her heart desire, he can transform her to normal, but she rejected the offer, and further told him that her heart desire is to help animals. As this was happening, Madame Morrible walked in, so Elphaba swiftly rushed towards her, and hugged her passionately. After the pleasantries had been concluded, the sage monkey unveiled the Grim Eerie. The wizard felt she isn't yet ready to cast a spell from the ancient book, but she insisted on carrying on so she can prove herself to him. As she got closer to the Grim Eerie, it immediately opened up for her. Elphaba was confused on which spell to start with. Then the wizard showed her one of his sage guards who has always longed to fly. As Elphaba pondered on what to do for him, the spell read her mind and opened a spell most suited for the situation. Elphaba read from the Grim Eerie to the utmost surprise of the wizard and Madame Morrible, but after the spell was concluded, Elphaba got to discover that the transition was immensely hurting the sage monkey, so she asked Madame Morrible how to reverse the spell, and it was then that she told her that a spell casted from the Grim Eerie is irreversible. Elphaba couldn't believe what she had just been told, and as she walked into the ballroom, she unearthed that the transition happened to all the sage monkey. The wizard and Madame Morrible were happy, but Elphaba couldn't stand the torture, and as she tried walking out, she figured out that it was the wizard's idea to imprison all the animals. She also discovered that Madame Morrible was in support, and as she poised her brain, she discovered that the wizard has no magic power whatsoever. Elphaba was immensely hurt with the deceit they wallowed her in, so she ran out of their presence in scorching agony. After she left, Madame Morrible threatened the monkeys, saying that if they want to keep their family safe, then they shouldn't let Elphaba get away. Almost immediately the monkeys started attacking Elphaba aggressively. Glinda tried to calm her down but she just kept on running non-stop. The wizard on the other hand, gave an instruction to all the guards to bring Elphaba to her. Elphaba, in bid to elude them, climbed onto an air balloon and Glinda joined her also. As they were about to escape through the roof, the guards shut the entrance, and the balloon exploded and fell down abruptly, but Elphie and Glinda were able to escape. After escaping, Glinda was trying to calm Elphie down as this is everything she dreamed of, but Elphaba refused to crumble in submission to feed her ambition. As this was happening, Madame Morrible made a public announcement to the citizens of Ounce. She told them that Elphaba has stolen the Grim Eerie, and is now considered a public enemy by all. She further told them that her green color is a manifestation of her twisted and wicked nature, and due to this repulsion she was now referred to as the Wicked Witch. Glinda held Elphie hand tight to show support, after which she tried to convince Elphaba to just apologize, and things would return back to how they were, but Elphaba was relentless and adamant on her beliefs. Elphaba felt that it's time to put her trust in her instincts, rather than in people, after which she tried defying gravity. As she came outside, the guard spotted her almost immediately, so she ran back inside. She opened the Grim Eerie and read a spell out of the ancient book, even though Glinda was trying to stop her. Few minutes later, a broom started levitating towards her, and they got to discover that her spell worked. Elphaba grabbed hold of the broom and she tried to convince Glinda to come with her, so they'll be the greatest team there have ever been, but Glinda refused her generous offer, and on spur of moment, the guards eventually breached the room door. As the two friends tried to run away, the guards grabbed Glinda and surrounded Elphaba, so in bid to evade them, Elphaba leaped to the other side of the room and further bursted out through the window. Everyone thought she had fell down dead, but as she was falling she envisioned herself when she was younger, and it was then she grabbed the broom and flew back up. The entirety of the guards were astounded as they saw her flying, and few minutes later, she led the sage monkeys who were after her to them. The entire students of Shiz got the news about Elphaba, and they were immensely disappointed. Madame Morrible ordered the guards to let go of Glinda, after which she proclaimed her to be the new sorcerer. As this was happening, Elphaba wounded back up and told them that no wizard there is or is ever going to be like her. Then thereafter she flew away while Madame Morrible took Glinda inside, and that was how the movie ended. Watch out for part 2. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. Thank you.